Hey everyone, Alex the Science Dude here. We didn't have a show this past weekend, so I thought I would try doing a solo show. Let's see how this works out. First story I'm going to talk about is the Chinese landed a probe on the far side of the moon. The probe is the Jan.12 rover, and there's also a orbiter that is orbiting around. Now, this is the first probe of any kind, lander, rover, that has landed on the far side of the moon. The reason this is the first is because if you think it's bad trying to get a signal on your cell phone going under a bridge, imagine doing it from 100,000 miles away with a moon between you and your antenna. The way they have to deal with this is the orbiter will orbit around and the lander will then transmit its data to the satellite, and then the satellite will transmit it back to Earth. There's a lot of experiments that are on this lander. There's actually a few experiments that are from Europe, so it's not just a Chinese satellite, but there's a few European experiments on there too. Some of the interesting experiments that are on there is there's geologic experiments to test the rocks on the far side of the moon. There's also an experiment that has an antenna on the backside or on the lander, and that is to look at radio signals coming from deep space. The plus side to being on the far side of the moon, it's hard to get a signal because the moon is blocking all the signals from Earth. But if you're trying to look at radio signals coming from space, having the moon between you and Earth blocks all the signals that we get from Earth. There's been a lot of talk about putting different kinds of bases or radio telescopes on the far side of the moon. The challenge is, of course, getting the signal back to the Earth without having antennas near the radio antennas that you're trying to measure for stuff. Otherwise, they interfere with each other. Another interesting experiment that they have is they have a steel tube that's pressurized, has some dirt in it, some insect eggs, and some seeds in there. The idea being is to test how well these insect eggs and the seeds will develop in the low lunar gravity. They're not going to be planting them on the moon per se. This is a sealed case or a sealed tube with oxygen and water in there, and it's only there to see how those insect eggs and the seeds develop in the low gravity, and that's it. One of the last experiments that it's going to be looking at is it landed in an impact basin, which is the bottom of a crater. And what they're hoping to do is start some of the measurements. They're going to see how much water and ice is actually within the rocks or in the impact basin. There's been suspicions and some measurements already saying that there may be some ice there, and they're hoping to get some more information about that, because if we can get water that's already on the moon, it'll make it easier for a base to be built, because then we don't have to transport all the water humans need to live to the moon. We may be able to get some of the water from the moon itself. The second story I'm going to talk about, have you ever lived with somebody that was kind of messy, and after a while you just went off because they were so messy? Same thing happens with stars. Astronomers have found a supernova that was set off by a companion star. Now, the companion star is about 10 times the distance that Pluto is from our sun, so it's not that close, but it's still, in astronomy terms, pretty close, and they are considered a binary pair, or two stars that are orbiting each other. One star, the one that didn't explode, was tossing out so much material because it was a red giant. It was shedding so much material that the first star got flooded with material enough that it passed the point to go supernova. The supernova star exploded, and spread out all this other material from the explosion out into the galaxy. the way they were able to figure this out is the first star that was shedding all this material, the red supergiant, had a lot of material going in all kinds of different directions. When the star that went supernova, the glow from the explosion would reflect off of the material that came off of the red giant star. Astronomers were able to watch this reflected glow spread across the dust and debris from the first star. Now, the thing about these supernovas, other than it's nice to know how stars blow up, these types of supernovas are used by astronomers to calculate distance, because these particular types of supernovas, they kind of blow up the same way. And because they blow up the same way, they produce the same amount of light. And because they produce the same amount of light, astronomers can use them, and they refer to them as standard candles. They're able to use these stars to help measure distances. So by learning a little more about how they blow up, they can make sure that the tool they use to measure distances is as accurate as they hope it is. So that's about it for this week, and hopefully we'll have a live show next week. See you all soon. Bye-bye.